Now we are to study the monk from the Prologue to the Canterbury Tales. So, monasticism, or also the monachism, mode of life practiced by persons who abandon the world for religious reasons and devote their lives either separately or in community to spiritual perfection. The vow of celibacy, poverty and obedience under which they live are termed as evangelical counsels. A person bound by such vows is known as a religious person, like to bind. A man who belongs to a monastic order is also called a monk. So this shows that such people who became monks, they were supposed to be living a life of austerity, poverty and obedience, and these monks were not supposed to go out of cloister. So cloister is the place where they are sitting and doing their manual works. So let's see what kind of monk this is that we are studying. So a monk there was who was a fine person and above all the others. He was a steward of a land and he loved hunting. He was worthy to be an abbot. He had many superb horses in his stable, and when he rode, people could hear his bridle jingling in the whistling wind as clearly and as loudly as a church bell. This monk was a lord of monastery in the same church. The rules of Saint Maurice or Saint Benedict were the rules he did not take care of. So, there we are told that this person was such a person that he did not look like a monk, rather he seemed like an abbot. So abbot is a high position in a church. He was having so many dainty horses. So horses in those days were expensive. They are even expensive now. So he had not only horse but also horses and those dainty horses, and he had also made a stable where he had fastened them or kept them. So these things were not allowed for the monks. They could not keep the pets. And when he rode, his bridle was heard everywhere. And but this person was supposed to be the keeper of a cell. He should have been sitting inside a cell. And Saint Maurice and Saint Benedict, they said that hunters are not holy men, and these monks should be sitting in cloister. So let's see what he says about those. So the rules of Saint Maurice or Saint Benedict, on the basis of their being too old and narrow, were not liked by this monk, who let go old things on their own way and did not follow them. And he always followed the new fashion, new trends of life. He did not give even a useless object for the text that said that hunters are not holy men, and also for the one which says that a monk, when he is cloisterless, that means a monk out of his cloister, is like a fish out of water. So he did not take care of this thing, but for him this very text did not hold worth an oyster. So oyster is a very cheap gem, and I remarked that his opinion was good. So Chaucer uses irony. In fact, Chaucer means that his opinion was not good at all. So a monk is a second ecclesiastical character that is discussed here. He is fifth character, but altogether a second ecclesiastical or religious character. He is also corrupt ecclesiast, and he has been doing what he should not have done, and in the same way he has not been doing what he should have done. His nature demands no restrictions. That is why he does not confine himself to the cloister and is always galloping on the fine horses and hunting here. He is a steward of land by monastery, but he behaves like an aristocrat, just like the prioress. He even denies the holy sayings of the saints of his own order. One wonders as to how come a monk keeps so many excellent horses, and Chaucer says that I said his opinion was good. So Chaucer is also using irony here by saying the same thing. Like Saint Benedict and Saint Maurice, they were against the monks going outside of the church and getting involved in materialistic word or works. So this person, even being a religious person and the follower of the same monastic order, he did not follow what his own saint said. Rather, he followed the new fashion, the new word, and he said that all the texts that prevent a monk from going outside and involved in the worldly affairs should not be given a respect. So Chaucer says, I said, okay, whatever you're saying, you might be okay in whatever you say. Now, in these lines, Chaucer says, that, why should he study in cloister and make himself mad? So, wood means mad. Why should he always concentrate on a book in cloister or work hard with his hands and labor as is commanded by Saint Augustine? So, Chaucer is using tongue in cheek. He is rather rebuking monk in mild words. So, he is using irony here. The saint said that how shall word will be served if the monks are not doing the manual labor? So let Augustine have his toil or hard work reserved to himself. Therefore he was practiced in pricking. So pricking is hard riding by pricking things to the horse so that it runs fast. He kept greyhounds whose movement was as smooth as that of birds when they fly. His all lust was for hard riding and hare hunting, and for this he would spare no cost. So these lines are ironical, in which apparently Chaucer seems to be favoring him, but in reality he is condemning his views. The monk kept hounds like priors, whereas Christianity doesn't allow the ecclesiast to keep pets, especially in the church premises, but both of them were keeping pets within the church premises. So they were not taking care of the religion, and the monks were supposed to be making manual labor. So manual labor in those days was like writing the church sermons and making copies of them and transferring to people. So this was the work of the monk, and in those days there were no photocopy machines, so they had to write everything with their own hands and make several copies of them. So this monk was supposed to do that work, but he was not interested in that. So he was only interested in pricking the horses and hare hunting. And now Chaucer tells us about his passion and his fashion. He says that I saw his sleeve was decorated at the hands with the finest quality of fur that was available in the country. He used a beautiful pin of wrought gold to fasten his hood under his chin, and he used a love knot at the greater end. So a love knot is regarded as a symbol of consistency of two lovers. So this shows his involvement in physical love. His head was bald and it shone like a glass. His face was shining as if it was rubbed with oil or ointments or creams. He was fat master in good condition. So he was a well-to-do person. A monk was supposed to be a lean person, since he was a poor person and he was living a life of austerity. His eyes were shining and they rolled in his head and they seemed like laid in furnace. He wore soft shoes. So soft shoes in those days were quite expensive, and his horse was in excellent condition. Now certainly he was a fine bishop. So when Chaucer is looking at all what he is wearing and the finest horse that is brought with him on the pilgrimage, so after looking at his fashion and his position of health, Chaucer is mistakenly thinking that he may not be a monk, rather he seems more like an abbot or a high dignitary of a church, even though those people were supposed to be living a life of austerity, but still even the monk should not be behaving so. So he was not pale like a ghost who was abnormally thin. So this four-pined ghost means abnormally thin kind of a person. And among all the roast, he loved a fat swan the most. Now this small riding horse was known as brown as a berry on which he was travelling. So the appearance of the monk is not less than that of an aristocrat. He used golden pins, fastened love knots, wore soft shoes, which were not available to honest ecclesiastical people, and those were expensive shoes. His character unfolds many corrupt monks of 14th century. So this monk is not only representing himself. The prioress is not only representing herself, but both of them are rather representing the whole representatives of the religion, that most of them had suffered corruption or they were involved in corruption. The monk loved riding, hunting, fashion and eating sumptuous food. So was the case with the rest of the monks of that time. So Chaucer condemns them all through this monk. So Chaucer is not condemning this individual monk, but also condemning the whole community of the monks. And as far as his preferring a fat swan, so we have a preference when we have eaten so much or we have tasted every meat. So he must have tasted all types of meat. That's why he's preferring a fat swan on any other roast. So any kind of roast was not available to an honest ecclesiastical person because he was not having enough money. So this was about his the text of the monk. Now the character of the monk. So ये जो monk था ये एक outrider था. Outrider means जो कि घोड़े को बड़ा तेजी से भगाता है और खरगोश का शिकार करता है. इसने घोड़े भी रखे हुए थे. अब शिकार करना, घोड़े रखना ये इन मंक्स के ऊपर मना था. इनका काम था कि चर्च में बैठ के जो रिलीजियस स्क्रिप्चर्स से उनकी कापियां बनाते, लेकिन ये इन कामों को पसंद नहीं करता था. इसकी घोड़े के चलने की आवाज़ दूर दूर तक सुनाई देती थी और इतनी ऊंची थी जितनी कि चर्च की बेल पूरे इलाके में सुनाई देती है. इसका काम था एक चर्च में बैठना और ये उस सेल का, उस जगह का, ऑफिस का इंचार्ज था. लेकिन सेंट मोरस और सेंट बेनेडिक्ट जो कहते थे उनकी वर्सेस के ये अगेंस्ट जाता था और ये उन चीज़ों के अगेंस्ट जाके वो उन कामों में इंटरेस्ट लेता था जो कि उन्हें पसंद थे. सो सेंट ऑस्टिन की थ्योरी इसके हिसाब से रबिश थी. इसने ग्रे हाउंड्स रखे हुए थे जो कि बर्ड्स की तरह बड़े स्विफ्ट थे फ्लाइट में. अगेन इन लोगों को ये चीज़ें रखनी अलाउ नहीं थी. उसके ड्रेसेस, उसके फैशन वो देख के लगता नहीं है कि ये आम सिंपल सा मंक है. सो ये जो तस्वीर में आपको मंक नज़र आ रहा है, एक्सेप्ट फॉर ही शुड बी बाल्ड, रादर ड्रेस इनका यही होता है. एक फटा पुराना कपड़ा होता है मंक्स का और ऊपर एक डोरी से इसको लपेटा होता है. सो ये मंक्स का एक रियल ड्रेस है, लेकिन उसका ड्रेस देख के लगता था कि ये कोई अरिस्टोक्रेट है. उसकी अपीयरेंस जो थी वो भी बड़ी एक डिफरेंट किस्म की अपीयरेंस थी जो कि एक आम मंक की नहीं हो सकती. खाने का बहुत शौकीन था और ज़ाहिर बात उसने इतने ज़्यादा रोस्ट खाए थे तो उसे पता था कि स्वैन जो है एक बगला अच्छा पला हुआ, वो उसका रोस्ट उसे सबसे उन सब में वो उन्हें प्रेफर करता था. सो दिस वाज अबाउट द कैरेक्टर ऑफ मंक एंड नाउ नेक्स्ट वी आर टू स्टडी द फ्रायर.